Hello, and welcome to another episode of Around the Verse, our weekly look at Star Citizen's ongoing development. I'm Sandi Gardiner.
And I'm Chris Roberts.
On today's show, we examine some of the improvements made to the turret system for Alpha 3.0.
Yep, looking forward to that. But first, as many of you know, today the 3.0 patch made its way into the hands of the Evocati test group. So, yes. So hundreds of dedicated testers are currently putting the build through its paces and helping us uncover any lingering bugs we're not aware of and give us some good feedback for the next round of testing when we move from Evocati to PTU. So in this week's episode of Burndown, we take a look at the build-up to our first Evocati release of 3.0.
Welcome back to Burndown, our weekly show dedicated to reviewing progress on the issues blocking the release of Star Citizen Alpha 3.0. We ended last week with one critical must-fix issue, so let's see how this week progressed.
We had two issues still, one with Clive and one with Carlos. I believe the Carlos one is still being looked at, as we talked about this morning.
So Clive submitted a fix for the crash,
Yep.
which turned out he just disabled the fatal error.
Yes, exactly.
There's
Well,
still an issue though with like clients can disconnect, and he will fix that properly over the next couple of days, but at least that unblocks Evocati.
Todd should now be going through our gameplay loops for shopping, commodities, cargo, and then he'll be able to give feedback on that, just like he did with the Mobiglass. We had a Mobiglass sync today with Zane and Mark White on production. Rob Johnson was involved while Bone is out, and the main thing now is that we're tiered up the feedback, and we're also putting those into what relevant sprints they need to jump into, whether it's PMA specific or star map specific, etc. And then those guys will arrange that, look at the backlog and have those set up to say, this is the kind of sprints that we need, or these are the last two kind of sprints we need to close out that feature based on Todd's feedback. And we start having those gate reviews. So Mark should be responding to that email, Todd. I had to leave the end of that meeting. And Chris is on that mail anyway because you looped him in originally.
Yeah, so it's a matter of identifying, what things we can do in parallel and what things that we're going to have to do serially, and give them priorities. So, but I would expect, Ricky, and maybe you need to work with Mark White, that this is kind of like what our production should be helping with.
Well, they need priorities set by the creative directors, and then, essentially, production can jump in and say, yep, this is the stuff that the team can look at based on what they've got available. But Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about Zane and Bone specifically because they are leads and directors overseeing a lot of things. Team. The whole UI team. Then if it's the whole UI team, then really that is a conversation that we need to have with Rob, Bone, and Mark then.
Isn't it just, this is what we do, is we sit down, we have the schedule of how people are, their tasks, and then if there's conflict to get stuff done, we've got to say this one over that one. But I'm just saying, it's like, I would be expecting this is how the department would run, which is like, they come back and say, okay, look, I'm getting pulled in 20 different directions, I can't do 4 things all at once, so which one do you want me to do first? General preference would be to get the ship stuff all dialed in, get the MFDs and all the HUD stuff and target reticles or whatever, get it done, dialed out of the way so we can get our item 2.0 ships working, and then I would be polishing the Mobiglass stuff. And if there's some stuff on the Mobiglass that can be happening while the focus of Zane and Bone and whoever's on the item 2.0 spaceship stuff, great, but I'd love to dial that in and then just start knocking off because the Mobiglass apps they're kind of a bit more discreet, I guess. So
Let's make the list, make sure we think of all the different things that's on the list, and then we get the approval, and then we can communicate that to
We had a go no-go meeting last night to decide whether we were going to go to the Evocati. The decision was made to not push to the Evocati with yesterday's build. QA were testing some fixes that we had in. Things were started out quite promising, and then we stumbled across one of the bugs that we thought we'd fixed up. the fix obviously hadn't taken. And also we discovered another couple of things that for some reason had started happening on this new build, one of which being the quite frequently players were seeing CPU spikes of about 100%, which means it eats up all of your computer's resources, just trying to do the next part of the game. So we need to take a look into that because it was causing some issues with our QA machines. So that plus the one that had to get reopened because the fix didn't take. We also discovered another few server issues hiding behind another bug that we actually had resolved. I just got told by Justin, literally as we walked in here, that for some reason the performance is in the toilet on today's build. Don't know why.
Is Balti looking at it?
I don't think there's a bug in yet because we'll
We are
just
getting a red
see.
capture right now. Okay. We're getting that right now.
Yeah, so as soon as they get the captures and the bug in, then I'll pass that along.
And then I don't know, like this, it's this physics issues which we had a couple of times, and they come and go, and it looks like the bug gets created, and then next day it get closed as cannot reproduce, and I think that way it never gets fully like traction on the actual engineer, like physics guy, to look into it, because he gets it, well, it's closed. What should I do? It doesn't happen anymore, and then the next day it gets reopened, and then probably someone gives it to him, and then he looks at it.
Well, we talked about that one issue, and Marissa replied to the chat.
Yeah.
The developer actually resolved it himself, and then QA said they had a process where they'll check 3 times in a row, and that's 3 days in a row on consecutive builds. And so if they're not getting it 3 days in a row, I need a call from a developer or lead engineer to turn around and say, well, it's fine. So if that lead engineer says, well, I don't need to look at it because it hasn't happened for 3 days, then that's fine. But that lead engineer needs to let us know.
This is the main issue that we're running into.
Well, it doesn't sound like that's very Evocati ready, is it?
No. And let's not keep. If Clive is here still, I mean, what are we going to get from it at almost midnight?
I don't know. Last I heard from him was an hour ago. I don't know if he's still online or not.
Yeah, he posted that comment about an hour ago on the Jira there.
I'm assuming by all that.
So, and it sounds like he's outputting them to the gameplay engineers, because I bet you what this comes down to is actually a gameplay engineer problem, which is the stuff spawning down near origin or offset from its origin, and then he's kicking back that the stuff is too far away from the zone of its parent entity.
But this is what I saw earlier, which was Balti pulled out the fact that like there was a bunch of stuff getting happening.
Right?
No,
Yeah,
it was
and
like
Bishop should have had his check-in.
Olisar is no longer a zone. This is what you replied to it like, isn't there someone else that can do this?
What,
no, I think that Dennis said something on the email chain. It said there's a chain about it.
Oh, about the
The
performance overall.
chain. It was
Yeah.
just Dennis just said something because it's basically Steve Humphries took a look at it and said this shouldn't be happening. It's like something's stomped on the object container file because the setup files aren't there. It's on an email chain.
So yeah,
It's basically someone's made it not a zone anymore because it's not a zone. It's code
I
performance.
think Aaron replied on that one too, right?
yeah.
Well, Aaron's like, yeah, who's fixing
No,
this?
like Aaron said in it.
So we're going to look at that here, and then we believe that maybe
Who's going to look at that?
Texas could look at it more right now with the design over there. But I think this is going to have to. This isn't in the studio.
Well, I can just go see what changed.
I think Sean.
Yeah, no,
I think we could
so
put
you
Sean.
look at the email thread because Stephen Humphries said he looked at the file and the source file's fine, but something's missing down the stream. Like the
Okay,
source
so
file.
it's like, yeah.
So it's like an export.
Trial
It was
of
a bad export.
Paul was asking whether or not somebody in engineering or yourself could look at this. But I don't believe it's anyone in engineering. But,
This needs the great Sean Tracy.
but also when I was speaking with Dennis, he's like,
You
you're
go
very
call,
busy.
let me know when he gets here.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
I'll check.
Can we assign this to you, Sean, so you can follow?
Yes, please assign this business.
Blame it on Sean too.
Assign to
Yes.
Sean and say,
Absolutely.
Sean.
Tell me
Please
Sean's
do.
fault. He was
It's always
messing around.
been.
We didn't go to Evocati because of Sean Tracy. All right.
Sorry. No.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, Chris.
Tomorrow. Yes.
Sorry, not sorry.
So that's left us in a position with 4 must fixes now for Evocati as of this morning. So the plan here in the UK is to basically just fix up those bugs. We've got QA here really hammering in on those so we can get the proper logs, call stacks, server logs, everything that we can possibly think of, better repro steps, just as much as the dev needs information from QA, they're there to provide it. We get fixes in from our guys here, pass the fixes over to the US QA guys to test. By the time that we've had our stuff go in and the build has been recreated with those fixes, and we start the process again. We hold another go no go meeting tonight, and hope to have a better outcome.
When QA got the build today, there was a complete hang that the graphics guys looked into, which was really cool. So they got that turnaround and fixed over just before lunch. So we had a new code build, and we kicked that off, which is what QA are testing now. Because we've got that new code build, QA were able to regress the disconnection 30007 error that we'd been finding yesterday. They have reopened that, unfortunately, and so that is now assigned over to Clive, which is why we wanted him taken out the engineering leads meeting so he can get onto that ASAP and start investigating that. That is the one that I'm just highlighting over here. He'll be probably working with Chad McKinney on that where need be, but that's one of the big issues that obviously the guys are getting when you get the error first time, then any client that tries to connect again ends up having that same error every time they try and connect to that server and that environment. It does hinder us, the fact that we've only got one type of QA staging environment, and we've asked for multiple. Paul, you raised that email, which is really good. So hopefully we're able to get a solution where we're having multiple staging environments for people to start testing that stuff.
I guess there seemed to be some confusion because Ahmed was like, well, you could just run different DGSs. And I guess the issue was the services. So why don't you guys get a call with Ahmed after this to resolve it?
So yeah, action point, Dennis, is for Paul and those guys to figure out a solution on that side, just to make sure that we have the multiple staging environment or a solution that DevOps proposes that the guys
make sure that you've got the UK QA leads and the US guys onto.
Can we also agree that we can take these current errors and add the 3.0 live label because?
That's fine.
We're still tracking down the actual root cause for the disconnects that we're getting currently, which is happening often enough for the various clients that it kills the server. The server doesn't crash, but it does mean that once a player gets into this state, rejoining back into to that same server becomes incredibly difficult. So we can easily see people dropping out of the server because of a disconnect and then not being able to reconnect, which just in the Evocati environment would end up with a lot of people being unable to join various servers.
Mark things in progress, work logs. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. We are trying to get a schedule together of what we're going to be working on within the next 2 weeks. We want to work on the week side of that. So I'm going to have to steal time from these two gentlemen, so please understand that if I pull them away, it is actually important. I know no one takes scheduling too seriously. But that said, if you have something that you want to get done, or some task that's sitting on you that you want to work on and that you feel is important, please let us know. Don't ignore something that you want to do or try and find some other time to do it. Let us know so that we have some time to schedule it in so that we know that it's a priority to you, what the business case is for why you want to do it. With that said, Lee, you got anything?
Make sure you check if anything's on you that has the Evocati fixed version, because that is the big oh my god thing right now on us. It's just me and Spencer, but if something comes in, definitely, if anything comes in with that, let me know so that I know that I have visibility on all the ones that are on the team right now.
Sort of scratching beneath the surface, there was other issues related around the insurance, which we went into on Friday. Carlos, Spencer, Chad, Paul, and Sam, thank you, and Zane have all been working on that today. Well, Sam hasn't because Sam's been ill, so Simon White picked it up. But they've been working on that today to get the entirety of the insurance and the insurance provider stuff on the game code and the UI all hooked in together. Si White put a check-in through about half hour ago, maybe a little bit under.
Carlos is about to resolve it. So.
Brilliant. Carlos apparently is about to resolve it. There was a little bit extra work that Zane needed to do on top of what Si submitted.
So the first part of this problem is that we were allowing you to spawn ships that were already destroyed. So you go into the ASOP terminal over here, you can find your ship. There's a little retrieve button here. crucially, we needed to turn that button off if the ship was already destroyed and in pieces, because the design is you're supposed to claim insurance on that ship, and after you've waited, then you can spawn it.
Then we have a second one, which was that the insurance system wasn't actually working as intended. In theory, once a ship is destroyed, you should be able to file a claim, and then you can pay a little fee to get your ship back. The ship you get is a new one, so it's like full health, it's not destroyed, and that's how the system should work. But there was a problem in the way which wasn't making this working as it should.
So this insurance bug is a little bit more dubious, because you could claim insurance on a ship just fine and go spawn this new ship you've gotten after claiming insurance, and on first inspection it'll look fine if you go out on the landing pad and you did like a Gladius or an M50. But for more complicated ships like the Cutlass, you might notice that all the doors are missing, and even worse, all the seats are missing. So insurance isn't fully entitling every piece of the ship to you. So some vehicles will spawn and be totally unflyable because they won't have ships, and they won't have seats or half of their necessary components to actually work.
Actually, it wasn't that bad because we had the game code side already prepared for doing this, and we also had the UI prepared for doing this, but we were missing some important hooks in between, which was what I tried to help fixing. So in the end, we just added the hooks, we fixed the UI so you shouldn't be able to spawn a ship if it's not available actually, if it's destroyed or it's not prepared to be spawned. And after that, now you can claim insurance and everything works.
And the only other one, this is the one that I put on the must fix list, but if Aaron and Chris are fine with it, we could go without it. It's up to them. QA pointed out to me that the inner quantum travel points, for some reason, are all showing up as being obstructed, even though they're not.
Around a planet or moon for RVs, we have to place these 6 cardinal points, quantum travel points, that allow you to travel all the way around. So if you came in on one side and needed to get around the back, you'd be able to bounce off of just 1 or 2 markers and get yourself there without having to fly around, or use lots and lots of little tiny points. So we added these. They're added by hand at the moment. Eventually they will be generated dynamically, so if we change the size of a planet, the markers change with it. But for now they're placed by hand, and what we did was we decided for a moon, the atmosphere would be, say, 0.025 the radius of the moon. That's how thick the atmosphere would be, because these things have pretty thin atmospheres. But it became clear that when you take into account the burn-up effect, the re-entry effect, that looks really odd when it happens really close to the surface. And some things are just, they're hard to sell. Like they have to look like you expect them to. So what we did was we used the Earth as an example, and we decided that the atmosphere of these planets and moons would be 10%, say, of their radius. And that meant the burn-up happened, higher up. It looked bright. And the bug was that these cardinal points then became obstructed. And obviously the quantum travel system has been in flux, so we didn't know if it was that was broken or what. And now it's kind of stabilized. We were able to go in and have a look and realize that we just hadn't updated the cardinal points position to be outside of the atmosphere, the new atmosphere, the thickened atmosphere. So you cannot quantum travel through the atmosphere. We don't allow it. So as you can see here, we move the cardinal points out so that you just kind of skim the atmosphere there, and still allow you to get around the back of the planet. So that's how we fixed the inability to target these using the quantum travel thing. But it only became apparent once the quantum travel system started disallowing you to travel through the atmosphere.
First off, today we had a deadlock on the server, or deadlock in the client, I should say, which pretty much killed things. And meant that the game lasted about 30 seconds before it just crashed out. Balti investigated this. We pulled in the various bits and pieces that he needed. I'll just paste the JIRA for your reference there. So Balti put a fix in for that. The fix was backing out his I/O scheduler work that he put in yesterday. So the next build, the one that's running at the moment, hopefully you should actually be able to just play it. And also, we resolved off, because we were able to check development builds, we were able to resolve off the bug that was sat, the other performance issue that we had, the server and client performance degrading as more people connected. It looks like, from the investigation that Melissa did in the Frankfurt side, that the fix that Crane put in yesterday for the fluctuating frame rate may have actually solved this one as well. So QA here resolved it off as cannot repro this morning, tested against the development build from this morning, and it seemed fine, so we'll need to verify it again on the build that is running currently.
The build that is running, because we fixed the build issues.
So that's the next part I'm coming on to. The build that's running at the moment, build number 637376, is going to fail. The build that is going to fail and hopefully pick back up again, I would hope we can treat that as an Evocati release candidate. Of course, pending the testing on Steve's check-in on that one. If that all goes through all right, and seems to cause no further problems, the frame rate's decent. Erin would like to try and push this one out to Evocati.
So, like I said, we're just finishing up the final chunks of the checklist, getting everything to support in terms of what's functional, what not to play with, what kind of stuff is going to cause problems if the Evocati pokes it, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay, we worked out in terms of what we're telling the Evocati to do, what areas they got to focus on, what we want to get feedback on.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. For this one, Chris, we just want them to fly around and go enjoy flying around the different moons and quantum traveling to different places that they've never been able to go before.
Star map.
Star map, yep. Which they've never seen, so this will be pretty cool to them. We'd rather them not focus on combat, I don't think, at this point. They could, but that's not a goal of this test. I think we just kind of roll it out and say, hey, everybody jump in your favorite ship and let's go check out the system.
And so if we say go, how long's the prep time? When do we think we'll launch?
I've got about 2 hours to finish up final stuff, get everything to support, have all that lined up. We've also got to finish our environment checks, make sure the launcher's good to go, because that will also be rolling out. So we need to coordinate with Benoit. And then after that, it's going to be, I don't know, we can't speak for live ops inside.
So after QA green light, then you guys got to go through your, y'all be on nothing behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're already staged essentially. I mean, it only takes, once we have the green light, it's the approval. I mean, really,
usually about an hour from when the QA green light happens to when actually we flip the switch. I think it's what.
Yeah, that's right. We still have to test the launcher.
Yeah, we do the launcher. We want to be extra certain everything is working there before we tell Evocati to dive in.
The most important from the EU time zone is making sure we have Evocati support for performance and other stuff like that, just to get out.
Yeah, so we definitely would want to make sure that we have coverage tonight. Obviously, people that stay tonight should come in, super late or whatever, or people go home and get a nap and then come back or whatever, however you want to manage it, Will. And then make sure that we have a handover to the UK team on sort of the customer service and support and the QA side, so they can just carry on. It's a full handover. And then what we really should want to make sure is we could probably, like as Aaron's saying, there's certain things that we want to focus on, like some of the performance testing and the stress testing or whatever. So we should start to build that, because it will be quite useful, because it's been hard for us to get 24 people playing all the time. So really stressing all the aspects, people in different moons, all around, seeing how it holds up. And also it's just doing telemetry on the servers and the clients.
So clear remaining time frame, how much longer you guys need?
2 hours, I would say.
2 hours from now.
We have to stop to go get the development manufacturers while we've got the manpower.
Okay, and then we'll get with Benoit on the launcher testing, how long it's gonna take, or I guess we can comfortably say somewhere around 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Something like that.
Okay, so officially, I guess it's a go. Aaron, I guess you concur?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely exciting right now.
Go! Go, 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 go!
So we're all very excited that we've officially pushed SC Alpha 3.0 out to our first round of non-Cloud Imperium Games testers that we call the Evocati. This group adds more than 800 testers to our internal QA. This not only helps us target specific areas to help further identify crucial fixes, but also provides the number of players we need to test our publishing process, including our new Delta patcher. And as we've stated, the first testers will help us evaluate traversal. But we're still polishing and improving all kinds of other elements in this release, including cargo and mission gameplay, the myriad of newly implemented UI elements, ship movement, lighting improvements, and so on. So while we're really glad to get this first version out, we are by no means done working. So we'll be releasing new patches to this Evocati group until we feel thorough improvements have been completed and we're ready to put it on our PTU, or Public Test Universe, which is where we'll invite even more to test this until we're ready to release publicly 3.0. So at the time of filming this, we're at 0 must-fix issues on this initial release of the Evocati. And this allows us to move on to another aspect of the 3.0 release, which is an improved shopping experience, including, but not limited to, buying and selling, try-on mode, UI flow, and so on. So we've added 17 issues to the must-fix list for those improvements. But remember, this doesn't include anything that the Evocati are now going to help us find as well. So check back here next week on Burndown.
There you go. So you can check out the production schedule report on our website for more information on what issues we dealt with during this week.
Now it's time to take aim on this week's feature.
Ooh, bad pun.
The updated turret system. Turrets are an essential part of ship security while providing opportunities for exciting multi-crew gameplay.
Yes, and because of that, enhancing the turret experience for 3.0 has been a priority for us. There's been a lot of feedback we've had over the time on forums, and from hooking them into the pipe system to improving the targeting and the general user experience, the devs have done a ton of work to make turrets more responsive and work with all the ship systems that are coming online with Item 2.0.
Let's take a look at this week's feature to see what they've done.
So we've noticed in the past that using turrets was a very unsatisfactory experience, mainly because it's so hard to hit things in them. So what we wanted to do in 3.0 is to improve that experience.
We had the old system where it used old items and had its own directing system. Now we had to move that to the new system to allow us to give more freedom for the designers to control. One of the features we had to do was make sure that it hooked up to our new pipe system properly, so it would be powered, it would generate heat, and it would overheat and have all that kind of gameplay. We also needed to adapt to a new aiming system to tell which way the turret was turning. We had to make new systems in order to make it more, give more player feedback, like when you're shooting a turret or when you're turning it or when you're aiming. It'll feel a lot better when you're actually sitting in a turret and using it.
The first thing we want to do is improve how you aim at targets. Some of the things we improved were to decrease or narrow the range at which you can free look and have the turret start turning its body to respond to your movements at a much more rapid pace. We also have a linear ramp up, so as you get closer to that edge of turning, the turret starts spinning at a much more rapid pace, so you can keep yourself on the target.
So right now, you remember your crosshairs, and then you have your circle pip to show where you're looking. Right now we have that chasing around you, so it's where you're looking is always to the center of the screen. And then we have this extra little dash pip that we're trying to get rid of, but it's part of the crosshair pip. And what you can see that as you turn the turret, it moves to show where the cannons are firing. And so this was useful when you're chasing enemies to know why aren't I dealing damage? Well, it's because the turret is compensating to not shoot and just blow up your own ship. But when the two reticles meet, it fades out so it doesn't block your view.
Some other improvements we've included are some fun ones, like we included IK, so you can actually see yourself as the turret moves and you're actually controlling it, and also some body motion using the G-force technology we have for the cockpit, so that you can respond to getting hit and you'll see that your body move as the ship tumbles about. There's some gimbling technology in which it compensates for the ship actually moving as opposed to where you're trying to aim. So the turret will keep its targeting as focused as possible, regardless of the ship orientation. So that should make it much better to hit targets with.
In order to get this work, we had to find a way to animate the turret seat and rotate it at the same time. So this whole system of the seat coming up and down, that's all done in animation. And that involves bones and timing things in states so that we can know that first we want the seat to come down, then we want the seat to come up, and then we want it to rotate. One of the things that we had to work through was that if you rotated on a joint while the animation was playing, they would fight each other. So sometimes the seat would snap back and forth, sometimes the rotations would snap. And it was just like, you would get dizzy going in and out of the turret. One thing that we had to do was to have the seat come down and then have all the joints, all the code do the rotations on one specific joint so that the animations would play on its child nodes, and then it would be able to play the animation and not fight with the joints while it was coming up and down. And so it would let you rotate and do all this. So before we started on the work, we had the ability to get in, we can get out, and here we are at the top, and that's it. Now, this is really inconvenient when you're playing, because say the enemies are in front of the ship, now you're just completely facing the wrong way. So, but we still get we get to do the long turnaround in order to shoot at different targets. So what I did instead was, we had a new feature in DataForge where you can define rotations, pre-enter, post-enter, exit-enter. And so this will allow you to define, say I want the seat to turn 90 degrees in order for us to get in. And then when we get out, we want to turn the right way. And then when we get out, we do the reverse, 90, 180, and 90. So exporting. And with our new angles, when we get in the ship, we can see it twists back and forth. This is the part where the designers come in and decide which angles to actually turn the turret in. But now we're facing the right way. We can turn the turret on, and then here we are facing forward, ready to shoot at any enemies that we're fighting.
We sort of had the pre-enter, post-enter, pre-exit, post-exit orientation tech in there, so that when you enter turrets from odd angles, and so we add a little bit of tech in which the turret, while it's not being used, is oriented forward, but when you enter it, it turns sideways for you, allowing you to enter it, be in the proper orientation, and then finally rest forward so that you'll be able to shoot targets in front of you. The most challenging aspects were probably getting the feel of converting what the player wanted to do as far as their input to where they wanted to aim. That was the most kind of like touchy-feely part of this, where it was all about, okay, we know the raw values that the player's putting into the system via their mouse. What does that mean as far as trying to be intuitive as to where they want to aim? That required a lot of iteration. We also figured out that there were some improvements in the UI and how the pips could indicate where you were targeting. And so we learned some things along the way and made improvements to the system that way. Another fun feature we added is an alternate fire mode. So you can click a button on the dashboard of the turret, and instead of the guns firing simultaneously, you now can have alternate fire, which spreads out your fire rate, but gives you a better ability to hit targets because you'll have a better spread.
So right now, the old way was that turrets, all the guns would shoot at the same time because turrets only had one fire mode. So you can see that right now, both cannons are shooting at the same time. Here, as a little backdrop. So what we did was we allowed this change fire mode to allow you to choose between staggering and synchronized firing. So now it's back and forth, and now it's easier to track an enemy as they fly along. Two guns between pulsing and staggering is kind of cool. Now imagine if you're on the Hurricane with 4 guns, and they're all evenly spaced out, and so you get this steady stream of bullets flying at your enemies. So if you notice something, while we're shooting our ship, sometimes the enemy would fly under the ship. Here we see that the turrets move by themselves. The guns aim at an angle to avoid shooting your own ship. Now this is because before we had this, the turrets guns can shoot anywhere they wanted, including through your own ship. Like if you're chasing through an enemy and they swoop down below the ship, you would end up shooting into your ship. Sometimes you would blow it up, sometimes you would miss, but we wanted to avoid that situation. So we had a few different solutions to fix that. So before we had defined limits, we could shoot through your own ship. You can see right behind the cannon, right behind the ship, you can see our bullets are going through the ship. The first solution was to have the bullets go through your ship so you wouldn't shoot yourself. And that worked because we're not blowing up our own ship. But this doesn't make any gameplay sense or like any sense in reality, because why would the bullets go through a ship? And so another thing we did was we would allow you to define these custom rotation limits. So we'll say we have these dead zones and angle limits. And so you could define a standard angle limit, which would let you keep the turret in a specific range, or you can, where it's either for here like this, 90 degrees downward, 90 degrees up, or you can define custom limits, and you could just rotate off of a specific joint. So right now we want to base our turret on yaw, that's our left and right motion. So we want to, based on our left and right angle, we want to have a specific limit. So when we are turned forward, our angles we can look 90 degrees down, 90 degrees up. And then let's have another one so that when we are 45 degrees to our left or to our right, we can only turn 15 degrees down and 90 degrees up. And then we just keep this going, define a few more. 180, so let's say you can't aim down at all. It was 30 degrees up, 90 degrees up. And then 270, where you can only aim down, 90, negative 30. Export this binary. So now we have a reason not to shoot a ship, and we don't have to worry about any stray bullets hitting us.
When we converted the turrets over to Atom 2.0, there are some things we lost, UI being one of them. So we are in the midst of converting all the old UI into the turret experience, so that things like the reticles and the lag pips are back. And we're going to be introducing a few more bits of information on the UI so that you'll get a better you'll have a better sense of where enemies are around you. We're thinking about what we can do in the future to improve both the communication to other crewmates about what you're targeting, and more information about the targets themselves. Things like the status of the targets, what other crew members, like in other stations and especially in other turrets, what they're targeting, and have them be pinned and displayed on your UI so you can see exactly what targets everyone's aiming at. Also, the ability for other stations to show you what may be an important target. You could have the pilot show every turret, hey, look over in this direction, and start firing at that frigate over there. These and improvements in the radar and communicating exactly where targets are from relative to your position will allow everyone on the ship to communicate exactly where they should be aiming and where they should be focusing their attention. The most important improvements we made were all done through trial and error. We tried something and then played with it a little while, found out what did work and what didn't, took the aspects that did, and figured out ways in which we could improve the aspects that didn't. Because turrets deal with basically like angles, right? So it's the angle of the turret and the guns to where you want to fire. So because the player is trying to get the angle of the guns to the target, namely the ships that are your enemy, trying to figure out exactly how the player input translated to being able to make that the source of the shot and the destination of the shot accurate was the most challenging and really the goal of improving the turrets. So all these things put together should mean that you'll have a lot more fun using turrets in 3.0.
There you go. So we've been wanting, as I mentioned earlier, to make improvements to the turret system for a while, and it's good to see some of those changes coming into 3.0. You know, there's a lot of little details like adding the alternate fire mode, which is something we can do because of the player interaction mode we have now, and giving designers the option to orient the turret in different directions when it deploys are just some of the new and improved features that will make using a turret a more satisfying experience for players and really sort of enhance the multi-crew gameplay aspect that you can do in Star Citizen.
Very cool. And that's all for today's episode. We wanted to remind everyone that September's monthly report will be available tomorrow. Check it out to get a wide range of details about all the progress we made this past month.
Yep, and I think it's probably going to be a little more interesting than they have been in the past because we're not doing the studio updates while we're doing Burndown, so you're going to get a little more information and some of the very aspects the studios are working on that you don't see covered in what we're doing on the Burndown side. So definitely check that out. And finally, I'd like to say thanks to all our subscribers for your support. It's because of you guys that we can produce the wide variety of shows that keep the community up to date with what we're doing, and that's really important.
And of course, thanks to all of our backers, your dedication to Star Citizen is what makes this truly ambitious game possible.
Yes, it definitely does, and thank you very much. So until next week, we'll see you
around the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.